Hello everyone. I hope everything is set up properly. I couldn't have really tested it, unfortunately, because I don't really go too much live on YouTube, but feel free to let me know in the chat if you can hear my voice good enough and if the video quality is good as well. It would be great if you can just say a quick, it's all good, and then we can continue. And also, please say hello from where you're from and where you're tuning in. It's always super nice to see where everyone is from. I can already see there are quite a few people in the chat, which is nice to see. And I also want to just everything is good, perfect. Okay, and I also want to just say about talk about how I will format this tonight. The plan is I'll just go over the breakdown first. I'll show my steps, what I wanted to show you guys, and then we do a Q&A afterwards. The thought was I don't want to do the questions, look at the chat in between, because then things will just get a little bit too slow and things will just drag on. And then also both scenes, the Houdini scene file and the Nuke scene file, which I'll be working with today, which I'll be showing you guys, are fully accessible for you. You can pick it up if you're a patron of mine. The link for my Patreon source stuff is in the description below, so you can check it out, go over there and get access to all my other source files as well. And also don't forget, I am quite active on the CG Lounge Discord server as well. Link is in the description below as well. And yeah, so if everything is good, I can see lots of people are here: USA, Vancouver, Canada, UK, Germany. It's pretty good, so that's amazing. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. My mod is active as well. Perfect. All right, so without further ado, everyone can obviously scrub forward and backwards or watch it later. So I'll be getting started now. So as you can see, this is now my Houdini scene here. Everything is nice and organized. I saved the scene file, so you will be able to see all of this. And again, you can get all these assets as well from the REBELWAY challenge. You can download all these environments. You can get everything as well if you want to follow along as I'm doing here. So obviously my first idea was what can I do to make it more interesting, right? Because when I went to the CG challenge on their website, most of those entries were explosions outside. You would always see the pyro, smoke and plume, and you got a lot of those entries. And I just thought, okay, I want to learn something. I just don't want to do the same thing. So I spent a little bit of time thinking. I was brainstorming with a few peeps on my Discord on the CG Lounge, and I just thought, why not underwater? Because I think no one did underwater. Maybe ice, but no one was immersed or submerged. So then I thought, okay, what can I do? Obviously, we need some bubbles. We need still to open up the ground where it's coming from, where the hydraulic is exiting out from. So I obviously had this thought process going on, and then obviously I looked at a lot of references here. I have my pure ref window here in the corner. And obviously Aquaman is an inspiration with all the underwater creatures. And then this was with the lava. This was something like this was my main inspiration, just because it's this muddy look and you get the glowiness of the lava underwater. You see the air bubbles and the mist and everything. What you see here is essentially what motivated me to do this. And then obviously you got these underwater vents, which I added as well. These coral reefs. Again, more lava. So I had my little mood board as well, just for all my references. And yeah, obviously it's always good to have references. I keep saying that on my mentorship or wherever. Always have references handy, so you can actually look at stuff and see how stuff behaves in the real world. Yeah, so the breakdown will be a bit technical. I think we'll be going into a bit of detail of the Vex code. I did some scripting a little bit, and then more Houdini side things, but I think everyone who's here right now is kind of interested in all of that as well. so it will not be too boring as I dive in. And obviously it might be interesting for you if you're starting out with Houdini. I'll try to be very like, I will try to explain it in detail so you can follow along, especially if things get complicated. All right, so the first thing what I had to do was to check out my Hydra list. So this is the main villain, I would say. Actually, before we get going, let me just show you first my progress, right? So this was my V1, which I did a while ago. So V1 obviously looks not at all like the final render. I added these fast bubbles. I had these corals already. This was an early comp. You can see it's fracturing, bubbles. And yeah, essentially this was my first render, which I don't know how long it took, maybe like a few hours. And then V2 was already looking a little bit better. Like I added the background rocks, added more of those venting, adjusted the shader on the Hydralisk. V3 was already a bit further along. I added this, I forgot his name. Well, the other guy here. His glowy effects in comp, and then added more of these vents. So you can see there's definitely a progression going on. I added more bubbles, the eyes are glowing, there's more like a different lighting now. And then I just progressed over and over, and this was now a different comp. Like I got some help from a friend of mine, Carl, and he helped me set this up to get this underwater effect a bit more in your face. Yeah, so these ones are all the different iterations, depth of field, and then the final one is obviously the one which everyone has seen by now, I hope so, which is this one with audio. And you can see it's very muddy, very, yeah, like I added a force field. So there's definitely lots of iterations and all of that. And yeah, definitely it's also reminding me of Aquaman as well, and that's also because it looks, or that this was one of my references as well. So anyway, so the Hydralisk here on the left, you can see it's coming in. This is sent like this. You get this scene when you start the REBELWAY challenge essentially. And then the first thing what I did, I added this trail sub, and what this trail sub is doing, it's calculating velocities. So if I visualize velocities here, you can see whenever the Hydralisk is moving, he's creating vectors, and I need those vectors to calculate bubbles or all sorts of different motions. The first thing what I did, then I cached it out because the trail is quite slow, and you always want to have the fastest speed you can possibly have. So it's quite important to cache things out if things get slow. And you can still see now, if I hit play, we have 17 FPS, which is pretty good. And then what I did, I wanted to create a low poly version, just because it's quite important to have a low poly version for maybe fracturing stuff, for smoke stuff. You don't want to have the high density stuff all the time. So I created different streams which separated from the main stream, which I could use into my simulations to get things a bit faster going. So then this is obviously the high stream, like the high quality is this one. I did also a high quality volume, like a VDB surface from that. And then obviously I do have my low poly versions, which look like this. And it's definitely, you cannot just do a poly reduce on every frame, because the point numbers will change and everything will look a little bit different. So what you want to do, you want to do a time freeze on a certain frame, and then you want to use a point deform, which is quite important, because if you use a point deform, the point numbers will stay the same, and you can use this in further along in the simulation. And then with the point deform, you can see now it's the same mesh, it's just deformed based on the high res point cloud essentially. All I did then, I actually transferred the velocity which we calculated onto the low poly. So even on the low version, we still have the velocity trails, which is important, as I said, for the simulation aspects. And then obviously I have the Hydralisk glow, which is this, and then I have a low VDB, and I have a top thing, which is just particles, essentially from normals upwards direction, which I use to create these nice volumes on top of this. And hello everyone who's joining a stream. I really appreciate all the comments and all the nice feedback on this here. All right, and a very similar thing I did for the Cyborg. I did also the low poly version and the high poly with the same kind of techniques. So this was my prep before I jump into everything. And once I have my prep done and I could see that things are going as they are supposed to, then I started, okay, let's just get going on the first thing, what I want to do. And I think the most prominent thing is, how does the creature actually come into frame? And what I did then, obviously I created a ground plane, I fractured that and let the Hydralisk come through. So let's see how I did all of that. So swap, yeah, there we go. All right, so more yard. So ground fracture, yeah. So this is my simulation for the rigid body simulation. You can see it's already, this is the fracture stuff. So what I'm doing here, I'm bringing in the ground plane, or the ground essentially, and then I'm just creating a grid, which is my area of influence, and then I'm arraying that onto my ground so it has the same surface modulations. Sorry. Then I had to extrude that, and I did some surface noise on top. In the point VOP, you can just create a flow noise or whatever noise and just add it to your point positions, and then you get a different noise on top. And then essentially what I did, I painted some density areas, which I wanted to have because this will be essentially showing my where I want to have high density pieces. So it's quite easy. You just paint on your mesh, and you can scatter points on that. So you can see where I have lots of points, we will have a denser mesh. I randomize them a little bit using the point jitter, so they are not all at the same height and not at the same position. And then also I went into the material fracture, which obviously fractures everything. And you can see we have a way denser mesh here where I painted. Exploded view looks like this. And you can see we have lots of small debris pieces. Also, interestingly, I added the interior detail, which helps to add more shapes inside of the fractures, which, so it's not just this hard edge, so it's a nicer detailed fracture piece. RBD configure, I need to set that up because I didn't want to have everything colliding. So I created a bounding box, and only the green pieces will be part of the simulation. It's quite important to try to optimize your sims to have a very fast simulation time. And essentially all I did then, I added the Hydralisk as my collision object, which is coming in here, which is my low poly object here. And in the RBD solver, the only thing which is quite interesting what I did, I used the constraint breaking thresholds to break my hard constraints into soft constraints. And let me try to visualize this here. You can already see you get these colored lines, and what they are showcasing is essentially the distance. Currently it's set on distance, how far each of those travel, like how far each constraint travels based on the force which is acting upon them essentially. And based on a certain distance, you can now see that they're starting to rip open, and you specify that in the distance threshold. So I'm saying whenever each constraint is stretched by 0.3 units, I want to delete the constraint, and then the thing is just starting to float and it's free essentially. That's essentially the magic behind this. And obviously what I did as well in the solver, I made sure that my my forces have drag, because underwater things are not falling and flying around like in the air. There's lots of drag and lots of friction. So I have a quite strong drag effect and an air resistance. So when things float, they actually do not fall in a way you would see in air. It's very slow, like the spin speed is really breaking quite fast. So all of these things helped to sell this look of underwater. I can try now to see. It's definitely a bit hard to see, but these pieces are falling or breaking off a lot slower than they normally would. And then I just separated the high and low pieces here, and I cached it out to disk, which is then essentially being used in my renders in the end. And I'll be using this as well in different parts of this whole breakdown. So you can see I have the split, so I have my high poly and I have my low poly, which I'm using for essentially creating bubbles and all that fancy stuff. And this here now, so this essentially now is how I fracture the ground. What I'm doing then, I'm using the broken off pieces and I'm creating bubbles from that, and I'm creating smaller fracture pieces, and the smoke. So now the next step obviously would be what are we doing to make this more realistic? And the next thing obviously is we go into the next section here, which is the fracture debris. And if I jump in here, as I said before, I'm bringing in my fracture low. And the cool thing now in this point wrangle, which is essentially a little bit of a coding context within Houdini. And in here, I can calculate the velocity, the speed, or like the distance it travels using this length parameter or function essentially. And I'm getting speed. So what I can just do is say, if the speed is smaller than this value, which is in this case 6, then I want to delete the point. So if I visualize this, you will see that the pieces which are fast, they will be visible, and it's pieces slower than 6 units, they will be deleted. And the cool thing now is what I can do, I can create particles on that as well. So if I hit play now, you will see that these particles are being simmed only on the pieces which are moving fast. And that way, I always have particles or debris pieces where my fractured debris are moving fast. And then all I'm doing now is setting a random number, which will give me a random instance. I'm adjusting my P scale, which is essentially the per point size. And then I'm just copying all my little fracture debris to my points. And then I end up with something like this. And all of these pieces are unique. And how I created those pieces is actually quite interesting. I started with a sphere. I created a smoke or a volume from that sphere, and I've scattered points within that. I then broke or randomized the shape, added some noise onto the surface, and then based on these points, I can fracture them. And you can see we have now all these little smaller fracture pieces, and I can say exploded view to show that how it looks. Everything is now broken off like that. Then I'm doing a for loop, so I'm iterating over every fracture piece like this. And I'm just saying, put them into the origin and make them all the size of 1. So you can see they are all the same size. And that's why I created this the MOPS randomizer, which is a node which helps you to randomize certain aspects of your nodes. And I'm just creating a random size from 0.01 to 0.1, and then I'm copying these points over. And then it gives me something like this. And this is all cached out. So as I said, these particles live where these high velocity debris pieces are. All right, and this is already how it looks like now. The hydralisk is emerging from the rocks essentially. You can see it's spawning these really fine debris pieces. Lots of detail everywhere, which is amazing, which you don't really see so much in the render. But I think it's a quite cool effect, right? And then the next thing which I tried to do to make everything a bit more interesting, because the set as it was just flat. There was like, it was as if it was staged. There's just this flat area, and then obviously it's quite obvious that something is supposed to happen right there. So what I did, I created these corals. So if I go to that maybe frame 1, you can see this is my stage here, this piece here, and then I created these corals on top, and they were just obviously coming a little bit from the references here. So I looked at these things and I tried to do something similar. And I was struggling a little bit to get this shape because they are quite unique and they look a little bit like corals, I think, or whatever, like these vent things. I'm not showing my screen, sorry. Like this. And essentially I struggle a bit to get these shapes working. And essentially I went to one of my Discord servers, the CG Wiki, and lots of people on there really helped me to get this thing along. So in the end, I started out using these little curves, and from these curves I was able to create this geometry. And I started again, I'm bringing in the ground like this, I'm subdividing it, and then I'm painting onto the ground a height texture map, and wherever I paint, essentially we will see these corals pop up. And in the attribute noise here, I multiplied a noise with my painted attribute to create more of these random height differences like this. And all I do now is the attribute wrangle then essentially creates these fur things or it's essentially kind of like hair. What it's doing is you specify how many iterations you want to do in the sliders below, and then based on how many iterations you do, it will create a jitter on each point, and it will connect these points one after the other. And let's say I want to have something in the back here. All I have to do now is go to my paint, and I can paint something onto the mesh like this. And if I go now to my attribute wrangle, you can now see we painted these little things here at the back. And then further down the line, I just resampled them to create a curve view attribute on them, which means it creates a ramp from 0 to 1, from the root to the tip. And based on that ramp, I can then assign a size to this, to each point, because there are essentially lots of small little points. And then VDB from particles creates me a SDF, like a surface from those points. And based on the P scale, which I created here, which is based on the curve view, I can now shape them. So I can now say, oh, I want them to be thick at the top. Like I can completely change the shape in a heartbeat just based on the spline. So I can have them very thin at the top, like really thin streaks. And this is all just done with this ramp here. And then I'm just doing some VDB smoothing operations, and then in the end, I'm creating the geometry of that. You can see now this is now my created geometry, and it's different because I changed the ramps now. And if I check my cache, this is obviously then what I ended up with these little blobs here. Yeah. All right, so this is now essentially the corals, and obviously I was always looking through the camera and checking the placement and seeing, oh, does this work? No, it doesn't. Okay, let's move this over to the side and paint one here and there. So I went back and forth all the time. All right. So I'm just thinking what we should we do this volume now? Okay, let's do the bubbles. So the bubbles are also quite interesting because let me just switch here quickly to explain it. So how the bubbles work, typically what we'll do the same idea, like we take high velocity debris pieces, and when it's really fast we want to emit particles, and then from those particles we want to emit bubbles, right? So how do bubbles behave? Like they do not travel laterally. They typically have an initial velocity. Maybe they have a short direction, but then they will break its lateral motion and just move upwards. Maybe they will wobble like this, but they will never travel to the side. They will travel and then go straight up. And to do that, I had to think a little bit how I want to do it. And essentially, based on its age, based on when it's emitted towards its dying, I can essentially say, let's say after half a second, I don't want to have any lateral velocities anymore. I only want to go up. And that was the idea. And let's just dive into this, into those nodes and see how I set it up. Okay, so I do have the render bubbles ground fracture. Let's probably, yeah, just not dive into this one. And so the first thing is I'm creating a collider object. This is driven from the ground, and this is from the fracturing ground. So you can see we get this blob breaking off. And what my idea was, I collect lots of particles in this little cave, and when it's rupturing open, I want those bubbles to burst open or outside. So what I did, I created a grid like this, and I'm emitting points from it. You can see these are the points I'm emitting, and they are collected within this shell of VDB, right? It's underneath this. And then, yeah, so, and then I'm just, they are waiting essentially. Once it breaks open, they just jump out of this, out of the mesh essentially. And the attribute wrangle here is just setting a random P scale, which gives me a random size of each of those bubbles. And this is the initial shape of one bubble. This is how they look. I try to keep them very low poly because I do want to scatter a lot of them and I don't want them to be very detailed. The mobs orient mesh is just helping me to align them, these points on these, sorry, the bubbles on the points. And without these orient mesh operators, they will be sideways or skew, and obviously I don't want that. I want them to be at the right layout essentially. And then the point warp here is just adding a noise overall, an AA noise where these points travel through. So you'll get this wobbliness. And if I play back now from the cache and maybe visualize the points, you will now see that they are actually bursting open and just traveling upwards. There's no lateral motion really, they just travel upwards. And this is exactly what the idea is. I want to show a better example quick. If I find the bubble fracture, because those are coming from these pieces which have a higher velocity. So these pieces obviously are traveling laterally as well and are creating these pop nets, or these points essentially. All right, so let's see what's happening. Okay, you can see I probably need to cache a little bit, but not too much. You will see that these points are bursting out. You can especially see it here. They are bursting out, and then they at some point they just travel upwards. Essentially now they just go upwards, and this is what I was talking about. So you see the side motion, and then they go up. And so how did I do it, right? So let's jump into the PopNet, which is essentially the simulator, the brain behind the motion. So I'm just starting with the points coming in, obviously, and then the pop wrangle is doing its magic. And as I said before, it's based on age. So I'm grabbing the current age as an attribute, and I'm saying I'm reshaping the range. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the range from 0 to 2 seconds, and I'm saying whenever it's 2 seconds, I want this to be half a second. So I'm essentially shrinking the time, like the distance or the time how long it takes for it to be until it's resampled to the range I need it to be. And then I'm doing the complement of that. So I'm doing 1 minus. So it means that this number is essentially going calculating down from 1 to 0. This is what this calculation is doing. All right, let's quickly check. This is the speed, and then this is essentially what's slowing down the lateral motion. And what's happening is here I'm grabbing the velocity x and I'm multiplying it with a, and a is this value on the top here. So this value is going slowly towards 0. So it starts off with 1, so the current velocity stays the same because it's multiplied by 1, but after like half a second it will slowly start to go towards 0, and then the lateral motion in x and in z will be 0, and we will only have the up vector, which is this one. And that's essentially the math behind it. I added a little bit of a noise on top, so you still get the left-right wiggle. And then this is the motion, and this is the idea I did for all the bubbles I have. Obviously they look a little bit nicer once everything is cached. And let me maybe zoom in a little bit so you can see them, how they first start towards the side and then they move upwards. All right, so this obviously I did a lot of bubbles. You have the hydraulic bubble, you have the vent bubbles, you have the shockwave bubble, then the breath bubbles. So if I all bring them in, you will see we have so many points and bubbles, and everything is there's so much chaos in this shot. But I think this is what made it work so well. And you can see we have all these tons of millions of bubbles. And now let's talk about the volume here. And I'm talking about the volume which is around the ground, which you can see here, which creates this nice layer of dust. And then also the volumes which are emitting from these vents. It's nothing crazy, honestly. It's just a little bit of a particle sim and then VDBs on top. So let's just have a look at the ground kick up first. It looks like a lot, but it's not too much essentially. So I'm bringing in the ground here again. I want to create the ground, the smoke or the mist from the debris pieces. So you always want to base it off on your sims, right? You don't want to just create stuff out of nothing. You want to reuse things. So I'm creating points from the fast moving pieces again, And then all I'm doing here, I'm creating a density attribute, and I'm just rasterizing this, which is then being used in my simulation. So this is just driven, it's creating points, and from those points I'm creating a volume essentially. And then I'm doing this very same thing for a velocity field as well, which I'm using here. So I'm creating a velocity field and a density field, and this is then my source. And this source is then put into my solver, which then does all the calculations. And I was using the Axiom solver, which is a GPU-based solver, which is a third-party plugin for Houdini, which I use because it's a lot faster to sim on Quadro RTX cards. And then the VDV kickup here is now reading from disk. And if I show my lights, this is then how it looks like. It's just there when it's rupturing essentially, and then it just fades off. It looks a lot nicer here than in the render because I really dialed it down in the render. Let's just not show the lighting just yet. And then for the Hydralisk kickup, I did a very similar thing. I just used a Hydralisk, created points on him, and just simmed some particles on him. So some VDBs on him. Also nothing really crazy, just a higher density sim. You can see actually that's repeating because I didn't have enough substeps here. But the idea is the same. And then for the corals, they were a bit more involved because they have like a random time offset to get this look. And this was a bit tricky to achieve. First, here, what I'm doing, I'm bringing in my my corals, and based on those on the reef, I'm just creating points, and I'm just finding the correct height for each of those points to be able to use them as an emitter. Takes a bit of time. Yeah, so I'm creating a random height for each of those coral pieces, and then I'm scattering points on them. You can see this is where they are. And from then on, I'm just using them to create a density attribute on them like this. And so this point wrangle here is a bit, it took me some time to figure it out, and I was also be helped by Stefan Walsh from the CG Wiki. So essentially what's happening here, I'm creating a random start time, which creates me density attributes. And if I scrub through here, you can see that it starts to flicker, right? So they all start at a given time with some offset or random offset. They then are on for a certain time, which is random as well, and then they die off at some random point in time. So what I can do here, I can specify the duration, the random start time, and the start frame. And with all of this, I'm driving the density. So once you have this the source set up, this is essentially how it works. You got to make sure your source, which is driving the pyro, needs to be good. And if you spend lots of time making a good source, you don't need to spend so much time tweaking everything in the solver. And that's what I did. So I really spent some time and added some noises on everything, and then played around with velocities and all that. It took some time to figure out what I really want to achieve. But then I came to that result. So if I switch now back to the cached out version here, this is then my coral venting simulation. If I add then the lighting again, you can see now this actually looks pretty nice, especially when I start to erupt. You can see there's definitely some force behind it, and it's really growing. You don't see much through the camera because most of this is just going out of frame so fast, but there's lots of more information, which is actually quite nice. That's the out venting, and this was now, I think, the coral vents as well. Let's see. Okay, it's all loading up. I just want to hide them because they are a bit heavy in the viewport, and I will also hide the bubbles because you don't really see them much. And this is mainly the look of that. And the last thing is, how did I do this breath, right? Towards the end of the shot when the Hydralisk starts breathing its fire like this. So how do I do that? It was actually quite similar to the other approaches, but I'll show you now in depth how I set that up. So in this breath group here, it's a bit bigger than the typical ones. I'm bringing in my Hydralisk, and at some point I'm time freezing it, and I'm using then certain points. So I'm blasting off this point here, and then I'm blasting off a different point, which helps me to create a vector, which is essentially pointing towards a direction. If I visualize the velocity, you can see they are pointing towards my goal, and the goal is actually coming in from the cyborg here on the right. And I picked also a point on him, which is essentially his torso, and then I have these 2 points, and then the original point, which is my emitter, is then the velocity is going straight at the cyborg. That's my idea. That's how I figured it out. And you can see this point now is its direction is going straight towards this cyborg guy, which is right there, right? So if I scrub, you will see that it will go directly at him like this. It's first pointing down because the head motion of the Hydralisk is down, but then it moves up and it's facing right at him. Okay, so then I did a pop simulation, which is a particle sim, and I made these particles move towards the Hydralisk. So they are it's essentially just a stream of stuff going towards him, and it has a velocity on top. So I can use the velocity field to drive my VDBs on top of this. Okay, got the Hydralisk in, and I'm using the I'm using this sphere as a little force field. I'm just using a regular sphere which is apparented to this point, so the force field is moving and it's just going in as an axiom collision object, and then my particle stream here is just converted to a volume, and that's all I'm doing. I'm doing nothing really much more than this. In the solver itself, I'm doing disturbance, and turbulence, which breaks up the shape of the whole thing. And if I visualize it now with my lights on, this is how the stream looks. And you can see it's growing and it's hitting the sphere and then it's going around the sphere. And this is all there is to it, which is, it's a nice effect and it turned out really well, honestly. But it was a very easy approach to nail, and I think it turned out quite well. So with this volume now, what I did, I wanted to have some light inside it because I wanted to give this energy over, like I wanted to show that it's really hot and really intense. So my thought was, okay, let's try to get some lights in there. So essentially what I did, I had my point of origin, which was the Hydralisk head, and I had the end point, which was the cyborg, and I created a line from start to end point. And this line is essentially then used as a light source, which is glowing from the inside. So let me show you how I set that up as well. So on the left here, you can see I'm converting this whole volume stream to a VDB. I'm smoothing it, I'm doing a few operations, converting it back, poly reducing it, doing all sorts of crazy things, fusing them together, these points. It's essentially a merge. Then I'm just left with these outlines of things, and these are now growing as the breath is growing. You can see that, and it's moving. It has like this random motion to everything. I'm resampling everything, carving it, which is essentially then growing a little bit more. So this is, I think, animated as well. No, it's actually not animated, it's just shortened. And then this is, I'm adding a point jitter to add this electricity feel to it, as if there's really some motion to it. And then I'm just caching this out to disk, and this is my interior light source. Then I'm doing a poly wire to give this some thickness, which I then use in Arnold to create my mesh light. And then I also had to create something for the bubbles, because I wanted the stream to come out and essentially evaporate the water and boil it. So what I did, I scattered points on this line, and these points are changing per frame. And then on those points, I'm creating particles, and you can see as well, they are just going upwards. Whenever the stream is there, these particles just move upwards. So we have even more bubbles. And these are then the hydralisk breath element and the bubbles for that. And these ones here are just the render nodes. Let's see. And then obviously you can already see now the lighting. How I did that was actually quite straightforward. I just have my key lights, which are, let's see which ones they are. Can I just do this now? No, I need to do this. Yeah. So these lights here are my key lights. And if I look through the camera, these are mainly from the top right, which are lighting, which are essentially doing the main look and shape of this. And then I added a rim light. Let's just make sure these are invisible. And then I'm adding the rim lights, which are these. It's essentially also a fill rim. It's something on it could be both. And then I also have the heat lights, and the heat lights are coming from the bottom. They are not shadow blocking in the viewport, but they are only visible once the ground is fracturing open. You will only see it then. And last but not least, I have these volume lights, which are just lights which are affecting my volume scattering. And this is roughly the setup. For the shaders, they are not really complicated. Most of them are quite straightforward. I just, like for the corals, for instance, I'm creating a noise. I'm clamping it a little. From the noise, I'm doing a random color between this lighter and darker brown. I'm adjusting it even more, and then it's my base color. And from that same noise, I'm creating a bump map and plugging that into this placement essentially. So it's really straightforward. All these shaders, the floaties are like bubbles, which is just a glass shader, which is essentially also nothing really. And for the hydralisk and the other guy, actually let's quickly talk about the volume for the breath. Also nothing really. I just have a blue scatter color, and I'm just clamping the density a little bit to get a bit more detail here and there. Nothing too crazy. Also the chat would be nice. Keep it English so everyone can take part of the chat. Thank you. All right. And let's see. And then the shader for the hydralisk is in this look dev scene here, ShopNet, and the hydralisk. I did a bit more with that, but it's also, I'm just using the raw image, the texture file which comes in, which you get from REBELWAY directly. And I just do lots of ranges. I broke a lot of things up to get a nicer surface detail, to get the look which I wanted. And then towards the rendering stage, in my out ROPS here, which is essentially the render layer system, I created the beauty pass, a volume pass, a breath normal pass, and a breath energy. I will show that in Nuke right away. But my main outputs were, let's see, emission, which I needed for the glowiness on the cyborg. Then I had a mask for the eye, crypto mats, the regular normal P passes, Z passes, and then obviously your default shading AOVs, and then my 4 PLOs. Right, so I have my rim, my heat, my breath, and my key light. So that's the typical AOVs I created for this. My render settings, you will not believe me, are very low. It's 4 AA samples, 1112. So it's actually a bit noisy, but I didn't care too much about it because I knew I was doing lots of comp treatment on top. Okay. All right, so I always have to drink because I'm not used to talking so much. All right, so this essentially was the Houdini setup. So I know it was a lot to take in this amount of time. But again, you can obviously always go back. And as I said before, the scene files of this Houdini scene is uploaded in the Patreon source file section in the description below. So you can obviously get the whole scene. You can follow along. You can recreate it, see what I did, and yeah, or improve it even if you want, if you do so. And the next part of this now we will be going into Nuke, which is the industry standard compositing tool, which I also am. I know my way around, but I'm not a compositor, so I always need some help as well. So the final comp was helped by Carl. He's a good friend of mine here in Vancouver, so he helped me get this underwater look. And then I used that to improve it and adjust things, add more things. He also helped me with the force field and I'll be going into detail how everything like that was set up as well. And also feel free to be active in the chat. We'll be going over the questions afterwards once this is completed here. All right, so now let's head over to Nuke, switching tabs here. Where is it? There we go. All right, so as I said before, I did have 4 render outputs. So one is the beauty pass, which is this, whereas everything is in here. Then I have this, which I actually did not use. I have my volume, my breath normal pass, and then I have my VDB pass as well, right? So everything in here is what I used for the final comp. And to see what I had, I always have this layer context sheet here, which shows me the crypto mats and all the other pieces. So you can see my beauty, then I have my P passes, my key lights, rim lights, heat lights, crypto mats, emission, Z passes. So everything was rendered nice and beautiful for me to play around with, right? And this is where the comp is starting. So you obviously start all the way from the top, and then all the fancy stuff is coming at the bottom here. So we will be going over everything in detail, and then I'll be just trying to explain how compositing, essentially how you would composite a shot like this, even though I will never call myself a compositor. I know my way around it, but yeah, probably there are always better ways, and I'm sure I have compositors watching, Sebastian and probably Carl as well, I don't know. So I might be saying things wrong, but I think I know most of these things which are going on here. So the first thing is, obviously we are shuffling out our key light, or actually our PLOs, our per light outputs. And the first one would be the key. So how it works, you have your beauty pass, you subtract the key light, you do stuff to the key light, and then you bring it back in, right? So this is the idea. You subtract it and you plus it, and in between you do things to it. So I'm shuffling it out. And what I did here, the light was too intense on his head. So what I did, I used a PMAT to get just the region around his face. I blurred the mask, and then I created a mask from this. So I created 2 masks and created a stencil essentially, and I used this to grade that PLO. So without it, you can see now I'm adjusting the intensity of this light source here. And before that, I was doing even more. I reduced it and I changed the color to be more blue, more underwater-like. And essentially then I adjusted the exposure even more. And then I just brought this all back together. So this is before, this is before and after with the key light. And I'm doing this for all those PLOs. So the next one would be the rim light. So I'm subtracting it from the main to isolate it from the B pipe, the main pipe. And then I'm doing some color corrections to it. I'm removing all the glossiness because you don't really have so much specks underwater. And then I'm just bringing that back together. So this is before and after. So you can see we lost a lot of the yellow, we lost a lot of the highlights, and then just adjusting it all over. And next up, we are on the heat, which is coming from underneath, obviously. And this is the first time I'm adding some glow effect to it because I want this to be really hot. And I just use this optical glow node here, which helps me to create a softer glow around this. And I'm just, again, I'm subtracting it. You can see there's no heat, and then I'm just plussing it back, but I added the glow. So this is what happened here. Next up is the emission and the breath element. So this was this took some time to get it right, but essentially, again, I'm shuffling it out, I'm doing stuff to it, and I'm bringing it back again, right? So for this, I stenciled out the cyborg because if you don't have, because if I didn't do it, you would see that he gets very, very lit, like very bright, and it was way too much because of the material and the mesh light, which was so close to his body. And then what I had to do, I had to subtract it essentially and grade it down. So I just really reduced the intensity of that on him. Did a few grades, reduced the overall intensity, and then I added the glow on top.
and I graded that down and adjusted it just so it feels a bit better. Obviously these steps here, I'm not doing these steps because I know how to do it. I open my render, do these things, and done. It's a long process of iterating, so I'm looking at the final result, I'm changing it at the top, going back and forth all the time. So there's definitely a process involved. It's not just a one click, oh, I know what I'm doing, and then we continue, right? And then again, we plus it over, and you can already see now it's definitely, it's getting somewhere now with the glow, this before and after. So it's slowly getting this diffuse look. And then also the ground was a bit too simple, so I added a few more masks here to just break up the corals and make everything a bit more interesting. So I created several masks here to break it up, and that's actually Carl did this setup here. He broke off the ground. He added a noise map here. It's a bit dark, but he created this noise which helped to break open, or just have not the ground to be like a single color. It added some noise to it, which just helped to make this look a little bit broken up, and it's not super dull. And next up, let's see what we have. So emission, this is what I was talking about. So emission is on the cyborg, and what I wanted to do, if you look at the final thing here, he is essentially blue, like in a neutral color. That was the idea. And then when he sees, oh, I'm in danger, he's transitioning to red, right? And the idea is, or like how we do it is quite straightforward. I just take the emission, I do a hue shift, which is animated. You can see it's blue, and then I'm transitioning to this red color. And that's all I'm doing. I'm adding a bit more intensity, and then I'm adding the same glow on top and plussing this together. On the right here, because the cyborg guy was not really lit so nicely, we did some normal relighting to just help with the shoulders and the head, just to accentuate his edges a bit more. So we're just getting a normal pass here. We're making sure that we just pick the top light essentially and pipe that into the alpha channel, and then subtract our main mask from this to only isolate the cyborg. And then we are just grading it a little bit to get a bit more ping on him. And then we just bring it back together, and you can see now we have the glow. It looks quite pink right now, but it's changing because we do a lot more color correction downstream here. And then what we have here is the crypto material, which this was just helping to get some softness around his head because it was a bit too dark. And then this PMAT here just helps to accentuate what you want to look at, and you definitely want to look, you want to see what the action is. So it's just helping to direct your eyes towards the center, towards the hydralisk, and you do that by having a light on dark or dark on light. In this case, we have this very dim dark background, so we do want to accentuate our heroes or villains with light or brightness essentially. Yeah. And then we continue. So this here is now the volume, the volume scattering stuff. So what I did in Houdini, I rendered two different colors. So one was a red volume and the other one was a green volume. So I had two to play with. And then I just essentially separated them. So I have one is a green one here, and then I'm just color correcting it to be more bluish, and then the other one was a bit more actually this one was more bluish, the other one was a bit more green. And then I'm just plussing them on top here. So if I reduce my f-stop here, you can see without this you don't have this nice depth. So adding the volume is really helping to get this the depth of the scene. And you can see without it, super dull or black essentially. And then if you add those things in, you get these nice, the nice volume. Especially when it starts to break open, you can see those nice streaks coming off the key lights. So it really helps to just sell this muddy, foggy, underwater look. Let's see what we do next. Oh, this is now where the interesting part. So once I did all the volume effects, after this, we need to add the diffusion, which is obviously what you see on the water. So the light is really getting muddy. You don't have specks. It's just almost a single like a blue brownish color and no specks. So the idea is to create a diffusion on top. So using this black expo node, you can essentially only target the black levels and blur them out, and you do that on two streams here. Sure where this is. This is only on the eyes. This is getting a glow on the eyes, but essentially this is here the diffusion, and I have two of those, and I'm just lerping or mixing them together to create this really muddy whatever this is. And then I'm just overing it over my plate, and you can see with that how dirty it all of a sudden becomes. So before, you can see you have the nice crunchy blacks and everything, but then once you merge it, you get this as if there's dust on the lens or something is really weird. And that's the idea. You want to have it really muddy. And then on top of that, I added another diffusion here, which even more makes it even more dirty. So this was obviously trial and error to add more and more of these this diffusion effect. This echo here, or this stream here, is essentially creating a mask around the head because I did not have a proper rest position pass to lock the mask. With this echo, I could extend the mask so we can have a few more regions. And then again, this was just adding like a little bit of some more dust or volume around the head of the Hydralisk. And now comes a force field. So the force field is actually quite interesting because it's supposed to be a sphere. It needs to move, and it needs to have some kind of motion on it. I first thought of doing this directly in Houdini and render this, but it's a lot easier and more controllable if you do this directly in Nuke or in compositing. All right, so let's see how this was done. So obviously we start out with a noise, which is a typical Nuke node noise, and you can change the type to whatever you want it to be. This is turbulence now. I'm just inverting the shape, and then I'm creating a mirror of that, and I need to have I'm not showing my screen. It happened twice already. Anyway, so I do want to have two different noises because I need them to be in the normal pass. So I'm creating a mirror of this. So I have these two different ones. Again, this is the noise. I invert this, and then I have a mirror of that. And I'm shuffling this in. You can see one is going into the red, the other one is going into the green, and then I have this normal map essentially of that. Grading it a bit to get more crunchiness, and then I'm just applying that onto a sphere like this. And this sphere is now obviously, it has a texture on it, it's moving. And then I exported the camera from the scene, and I use a scanline render. If I look through the camera, is it loading? Let's see what's happening. So all the motion blur was actually rendered in Houdini directly, so that was good. I didn't need to do a post blur in Nuke or something. So I hope this will come back. It's thinking. There we go. I think I have a lot of samples. That's just why it's so slow. So this sphere essentially, let me just change this now. Multi-sample. Let's just have 3 samples. And then we should be able to scrub. Yeah, so this is the force field. I only want this for 10 frames towards the end. So I was looking into my final comp here just to see where it's placed, and then I was animating where it is in space. And then all of these things here this is essentially creating a stencil around it to get a softer fall off. And then this is being used on our image essentially. So this normal map here is used as an eye distort, as a distortion node. So in this shuffle, you can see that I'm using the red and green component of this map, and I'm piping them to the forward channel, which is used to create the distortion, and I will show you in a second. So the blur node here is, you can see I'm blurring only the green channel here. You can see now already we get something here based on where the sphere is in the camera space. We are blurring around our cyborg. And then also I'm grading, which is the outer one, which is creating this fall off here, which I'm using to just make this a little bit brighter to see there's something some thickness or some solidification of that force field. And then comes the eye distort. And the eye distort again is based on our normal map, which we animated. So all you have to do is tell the UV channel which one to look at, and you wanted to look at the forward channel, and then you can already see that it's breaking up the shape. And you can change the intensity. You can see now we really get a force field here. Or you can have it very subtle. So this is essentially how you do heat distortion or shock waves and all these things. You would do this with an eye distort node based on the forward channel here. And then this is just animated because I only want it to be active at a certain time. So this is the mat. I'm just blending it in. So whenever he starts breathing, I'm enabling the force field. And then you might wonder why I created this normal pass for the breath. And ideally, it's the same. It's the same idea as I was using with the other eye distort. So I'm just shuffling this again as my forward motion, forward channels, forward U and V, and then I'm doing an eye distort again, and that's all I'm doing. And you can see without it, it looks quite flat, and you don't really see the thickness and the intensity of this of the breath element. So the eye distort gives us this thickness, and it feels like it's distorting, and it's breaking the surface, the water, and it's starting to boil. So I did animate the intensity of this because I wanted to start very slow, and then I wanted to ramp it up. So the distortion is obviously driven by the UV scale as well. So this helps to really sell this thick stream of power, whatever it is. All right, and then we are removing every channel because we want the ZD focus to be as fast as possible. So I'm deleting everything except Z, and then I'm using defocus. I animated the focal points, so we have some nice motion. And if I look at this, you will see that in the beginning, the focus is on the cyborg, and then we're transitioning the focus into the scene to look at these corals, and then the focus is on the hydralisk most of the time to show the motion. And then now comes the few things which just helps to polish it. I use chromatic aberration. Underwater you see lots of color fringing, and it depends also on the lens obviously, but I like this aberration because you get the nice color tears on the side. You can see it looks quite nice. You get the blue and the reds here. It looks quite real, I think. And yeah, ZD focus node actually has a bit of an aspect ratio, so it's not as straight sphere. It has 5 blades. I played around with the inner size, so just to make these bouquets a little bit more interesting. Yeah, chromatic aberration, color matrix. This is now the node which does the color essentially, which gives you this real underwater feel. And the color matrix, so it's split up in RGB. So this is red, green, blue, and red, green, blue, and you're adding these channels to it. So if I reduce this here, we don't have any red contribution. So if I do 0.1, we get a bit more red, and we obviously have way more green, and we have just a little bit of blue. And this is essentially how you do the color, and then you have the contrast. To be quite honest with you, this stuff is coming from Carl, so he just put it in here, and I just left it. I tried, like he explained to me what it's doing, and this is essentially just doing the color correction in a better way. Instead of using a gain multiplier, which will multiply all the channels, this is like how you would add them together. And then towards the end, we just have a vignette to get this nice focused look, so you are just focused in the center of everything. And again, these are my iterations here. So these are the first iteration essentially. So this was the first compass. You can see it's quite different than the final look. But again, this was my progression. So first one we started adding the bubbles. Then you can see I worked on the shader on the hydralisk. It's really bad, the initial shader which I played with. Where is it? yeah, you can see it's really broad and rough. So I thought, okay, I gotta adjust it. So I made this a lot smaller. I started to add motion blur to it. Next one, I added the cyborg, and then the depth of field was way too strong. You didn't know where to look at, and the initial ones also had a different these different ventings here, like the different volume passes. So you can see it's a progression. So this is what I had before, and then I switched to the other vents like this. It's a bit more interesting, I think. Let's see. Then I played around with the bouquet, added more of this glow to it, changed the heat. So you can see I tried a few different ways, and I wanted to make sure everything is interesting. So I went through several iterations, especially towards the end. You can see it's more granular changes, but yeah. And then I came to the final thing. So this is without distortion. This is adding the distortion. This is the first heat, the first force field here. And then I adjusted the heat effect. So this is roughly how I envision it to look. Like I want it to be underwater, and I wanted it to be very muddy and secluded in the dust. I think I could have spent so much more time on this. I got so much feedback from everyone, especially on Discord. Lots of people say, oh, you got to add this. Someone said I need to add more like plankton or stuff floating on the water, or more algae on the sides. And then someone said I need to add electricity. When he's charging up, he loads up electricity and then releases that. So that's actually something I try to do on the side here. Let me show that quick. Let's see, there we go. So what I tried to do, I rendered these little things here, and if I switch back to Houdini, let's see, in the object context. So I had the static energy idea. So I obviously had the hydralisk, and I wanted to create these veins coming off of him, like, and then I wanted to create some kind of as if there's some energy growing on him. But in the end, I tried a few things, and I tried to use PMATs, which were animated and all that, but it just didn't really work as I expected. So I just stopped and didn't pursue it much further. And again, as I said, you can spend so much time on it. So I just essentially just gave up on it and just said, okay, I got to finish it and be done with that. So I think I went quite thorough with everything. And again, if you want a Nuke script, again, you got to be a patron of mine. The link is in the description below if you want to check out the source files. And also on the Discord as well, you have all the links to all my existing source files before that. So again, you get the Houdini Scene files. I can actually show you the folder you will be getting. So this is what you will be getting. You will get my my references. You get the final render. You get a few still frames for one frame. So you get 195 as the frame you will be getting, and you get all the passes. So you can plug it into the comp, see how everything was done. And obviously you get the full Houdini Scene. You might need to cache everything out to disk, and you need to get the REBELWAY scenes as well, which are for free on their website. And then you get the Nuke script as well. So everything is there. And I didn't show my screen again. I will show it now. So it's like a bit small, but you'll get frame 195, those 4 frames, get the comp, you get the reference, Houdini Scene, final render, and a still image. So that's in that Patreon package. And as you can see, I do have a lot of source files, so it's not just that, you get everything. Let's go back here. All right, so I think that is everything I wanted to showcase, and I'm open for questions now. So I will have my chat window open here on the side, and you guys feel free. I will scroll through a little and see if I can find any questions, which I didn't answer yet. All right, let's see. Greetings. So I need to maybe place them a bit more here. Yeah, okay. Reminds me of Aquaman sequence, 2 a.m. Yeah, for me it's now 12. So my main package, which I use, is probably Maya still, for look dev and lighting and all that. I always use Maya, but I want to be going more into FX just to get more knowledge on that field, because I'm quite interested. I always was. And now I just find it's good to just understand effects and just get better at that. So I'm learning Houdini. The cool thing is they have Solaris now. They are starting to build up their lighting pipeline. So yeah, it's quite interesting for me to just check out Houdini. So I'm liking it quite much. Yeah. Houdini. Let's see. I'm checking if I missed any questions. There was then Spanish. Are you rendering cryptos? Yes, I did render crypto mats. I didn't expect such a cool result. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Fixing comp. Oh, the motion blur, as I said, the motion blur was done in Nuke. Sorry, in Houdini, so I did render the motion blur. It's always good to render that, especially if you have all these crazy motions. You do want to render the motion blur. So Amit is asking, these new gizmos, are they from Nuke or custom built? So they are, these gizmos are not custom built. You can get them, you can download them. It's called the Swiss Army knife. And you can download them. You just Google Swiss Army knife for Nuke. And then you get you get the PMATs, you get the glows, you get quite a few of those nodes I use. I think actually all the ones I use most of them are coming from here. So you can just get this Swiss Army knife for Nuke and play around with that. There's great documentation on it. And that's what I use essentially. All right, let's see. Q&A is after. You really need to be a VFX student, Alam. Yeah. Well, do you sell NFT art? No, I do not sell NFT art. Nope, do not. I'm not really planning to. I think it's the whole idea is quite bizarre. So I get it. It's good for the artists, but I think the whole system, how it's working, is for me a bit bizarre. So I don't know, maybe I just don't know how it works. Could I imagine doing effects in the future? Thanks for the question, Brian. Like, I don't know, like being full-time effects artist is definitely a different thing. It's not just doing all the cool stuff. You do lots of things which are really tedious and not so fun, especially if you do work in production. But like for personal projects, I still like to improve my skill set on the effects side and just be more fluent, especially in Houdini, and just the whole knowledge of effects. Like, you obviously need to know, you don't need to be a doctor in physics and stuff, but you do need to understand the basic things. You need to be able to calculate vectors and all these funny things. And it's just fun to be able to be so free in Houdini, just to do anything you like. And the thing in Maya, it's a bit limiting. You don't have the full control of everything. You just have your pre-built things. You obviously you can do mail scripting, yes, but you're still just working visually. And in Houdini, you have this coding. It's similar to Unreal, where you have your visual coding context, and in Houdini it's quite similar, and I do really enjoy that. Yeah, so let me know if there are any more questions. We still have lots of viewers here, which is quite nice. So let me know if you have any other questions. It doesn't need to be about this. It can be 3D related, anything which is on your heart. And again, we do have the CG Lounge Discord server, which is growing. It's almost 4K members. It's a lot. And on the CG Lounge, it was initially quite small, but the idea is to create like a landing place where people can share, get better, get feedback. We do have team challenges and all that funny stuff. So it's a growing community, and I'm driving it a lot. So I hope I see you there.
So Stefan is asking, what would you do if you wouldn't work in effects anymore? It's a good question. um, I think like sitting in the office is definitely not something I want to do all my life, especially it's straining on you a little bit. Like especially you cannot be your own boss. You always need to work for someone. You can't really do your creative ideas or give your creative input because there's always someone higher up. So it's always a bit tricky. But I think if I wouldn't do VFX, I'm not sure if educating counts. Like I love teaching, as you know. That's why I have my YouTube stuff. So if I would probably would try teaching and being more on the social side, I believe. Cool, the Nightbot is not really working. I thought I set up the commands properly, but it's not. Thanks for the question, Shevin. Really appreciate it. Gem is almost 100% Houdini now. Good to see your breakdown. Cool. Start new compositing sessions as well. Well, I do have a good friend of mine, Sebastian Schutt, who just started his YouTube channel, Split the Diff. Gotta check it out. So he's a pro. He knows his Houdini stuff. The same as Carl, but he doesn't have a channel yet, so he needs to get moving. So I don't think I will ever do comp in that fashion. I will know my comp for slap comps and doing like smaller projects like we just did. Obviously, it's always good to know comp, to know how things work, which will just help you as well to grow as an artist, to always know the other departments and how they roughly work. So you can say, oh, let's do it in comp, or hey, I can do it in lighting. It will be easier if I do it because then you don't need to struggle with math and whatnot. So it's always good to see what's happening. Is it possible to start in VFX industry with texturing or look dev, or do I need to be a general before? You can totally just be specific into one discipline. Lots of bigger companies are hiring specific to those departments, so they might just need look for a texture artist. And if you are good at texturing, you can totally get the job, even if you have no clue about modeling, animation, or layout, or whatever. So you can totally join the VFX industry if you just know one field. And that's essentially how I started too. I started out as actually, was it look dev? I think I did start as a generalist. The thing is, I started out in a smaller company and they obviously don't have 20 people or whatever. Like it was more or less a one-man show. So I was you can only be a generalist, but for bigger companies, it doesn't matter too much. But I think once I joined the bigger companies, I was doing look dev mainly, and then I was transitioning to lighting. I always loved lighting. I always did lighting. So it's always for me, like, is it lighting or look dev? I think I can do both pretty well, and I love doing both pretty well. Yeah. Funny enough though, before, like I planned, like before going into 3D in general, I thought like I want to go to what is it? Is it DEA in English? Like I just wanted to be like a undercover cop, essentially, to find those drug cartels. I was obviously inspired by the movies, but that's something I would probably be doing if I wouldn't join the VFX bandwagon. That was like my goal. If I don't come or join VFX, then I want to go to the army or to the police and stuff. That was my idea. I'm a big guy, so I think I could have pulled it off. Okay, let's see. Balaski. Houdini has also one additional pros. It's crashing less often than mine. That's definitely true. But it does crash. It crashed for me on this project, not too much, thinking back. So it was actually pretty good. It wasn't too bad. I spent 3 days to make RBD sim at the beginning, but still it still looks bad. Yeah, RBDs, it can obviously be a bit tricky. It takes a bit of time to get used to how it works and what you need to create in the source to get the right things you want to achieve. And that's what I'm struggling too. Like, you got to understand how constraints work, how you break them, how you can apply gravity and different effects to it.
Okay, so what is your favorite glow node in Nuke? Again, I'm not a comper, so I just ask my buddies and they tell me use this or use that node. I always like to use exponential glows because the fall off is quite nice. It's not a linear fall off, it's actually nice and exponential. You can get a lot of nice nodes on Nukepedia. You just search for glow or exponential glow and you get them. That's what I did, and then I found the Swiss Army knife, which has their built-in glow nodes, which are working great. So I probably will be only using them. I want to be a journalist, but now I'm focused on special effects, smoke, fluids, RBD sim. Yeah, it's definitely great. Like effects was always like, I was always intrigued by effects, but I just I never, I think, understood Houdini until at work I could really pester my colleagues and ask them, what, how do you do that? And then at some point it clicked for me, and then I was able to learn by myself. What do you think about the Bifrost graph in Maya Max? Visually, I don't like it at all. Like, I think it's just there's like this node, and then there's this big circle in the middle, and the connections. I'm not very fond of it. I might just need to get Hank Schneider. I just saw that. That's funny. I just shit, where we're going now. Oh, yeah. So I think I just need to get used to that Bifrost graph because it is so different. I know they are continue to work using that, so I know they will be developing more with that Bifrost graph. So I don't know. I don't like it too much. That's why I didn't try Bifrost yet, just because of this visual thing, which is a bit, for me, it's a bit much. But yeah. Okay, if you were to create a short, would you create final renders in Houdini or Maya, or keep going back and forth as needed now that Maya had better integrated USD? I think I would always work in one package as my main package. So let's say I'm starting look dev in Maya and I'm starting to set up lights. I will not go back and forth, even though if I need to do effects and I don't want to do it in Bifrost, I do want to do the effects in Houdini, then I would probably export USD stuff or LMX into Houdini, do the sims, and then just bring them back into Maya and render there. But it depends how you want to like set it up, right? It depends if your team is on Houdini side, or if you just want to get better at Houdini, I would recommend you just do the whole project in Houdini, or vice versa, right? It's up to you. I think your both packages are very capable of doing good things. Probably animation wise, Maya is the way to go, but you can always animate in Maya, go to Houdini, or you can do your sims in Houdini and go to Maya. So you're very flexible in that sense, and it will just become more and more flexible just because we have way more standards. We have Open Color IO, which is our color standard. Then we have USD, Universal Scene Descriptions, which are starting to be adopted everywhere. Then we have Material X, which is, or the standard surface shader, which is developed by, I think, a few of the bigger companies. It's ILMX Labs, I think it's Autodesk, and I think there was one more. They created the standard surface shader, which is native to Arnold, but other companies or other renderers are adopting this principle. It's open source. You can get that on I think Autodesk GitHub page, so it's pretty cool. What do you think of Substance Designer? Substance Designer is actually pretty amazing what you can do with it. I love the node-based approach. It's very flexible, and you have so many interesting nodes which I don't even understand. I sometimes open it up, play around, and then open examples, check it out. But most of the time I'm just playing. I don't really work with a designer. I'm mostly working with Substance Painter. But I know that Designer is quite powerful, and you can super procedural things. I love the way you can create these dynamic grounds based on height maps and all that. So it's super nice. I also use the Megascans bridge as well, which has the Quixel, what is it called? Well, Quixel Mixer, I think, which is also quite interesting. So I love to use those tools as well. Would you work in the game industry for EA? I probably would. Not with FIFA though. No, I'm just kidding. Um, because EA is also in Vancouver, Burnaby here. It's quite close by actually. So I'm always having a little ear open towards the gaming industry because it's getting really traction, and it's like how it's real time rendering and the ray tracing and all that. Super interesting. Gaming itself, the thing is though, you have so many constraints. Even though polished games don't look like they have constraints, they are still very limited to what you can really do. So I don't know. As I said, I'm always checking what is available, but I never really applied. I did some back and forth, but I didn't really apply. No. Do you know in VFX studios can hire people who live outside their country to work remotely? That it's really dependent on the company. Probably companies will do it. I know that Weta is kind of doing this remote only now. So you can probably work wherever you are and work at Weta from home wherever you are in the world. Just because Weta is so isolated in New Zealand, you don't always have obviously the possibility to fly over there. So I know companies do it. But it's up to the company. I know a few are doing it for sure. Mm. Is it easy to get a visa? I'm not sure how it is right now with the COVID situation, but you need to have a good reason. Most of the time, you apply at a company, and they are sorting the visa for you. And if you are able to get that, like if you can get a job at a company and they give you the visa, it's obviously a lot easier because they are paying for it. They are doing all the heavy lifting. So essentially, you just need to fly over and everything is sorted for you. But if you want to get a visa and find a job here, I think it's a bit different. What I would recommend is you come to Vancouver on a travel, a travel, what is it, tourist visa. I think it's valid, depends where you're coming from. I know from Germany it's 6 months, and in that 6 months you could probably find a job. You cannot work, but you could potentially find a job and go to interviews and meet people and whatnot. But then you do need to have a work permit, which is tied to your employer, or if you're lucky, you get an open work permit, which allows you to work at any company, or you get permanent residency, which allows you also to work at any company. But it's a bit tricky, obviously. It depends what passport you have and how the company can help you to get it. Could you imagine opening your own studio? I thought about it, but it's yeah, I could imagine myself doing it, but I know it's definitely hard work, especially to get your foot into the door and into the industry. It's definitely not easy, and I know there are lots of smaller studios out there. The ideal way would be to obviously join a studio and then build your way up until you're pretty high up. But yeah, I did play with the idea to create my own studio. Obviously, I did freelancing work a while back, so I did have my own name registered and all these things. So it would not be too difficult to create my own studio. But yeah. Any tips for students who are coming in September? I guess you mean by coming in September is coming to Vancouver, I guess. I don't know. No, not real tips. Obviously, enjoy Vancouver, get your outdoor gear and enjoy the nature here, which is amazing. So I don't really know what tips I can give. Can you give us a link for the Nuke tools? I guess it's not from Victorinox. No, it's not. Okay, let me check my browser quick. Swiss Army. I think it was on Wikipedia. Maybe it wasn't on Nukepedia. One sec. Yeah. Is it this one? I'm just sorry. I'm just checking quick. Actually, I don't know where I downloaded it from. I can probably click on the documentation here. One sec. Documentation. Let's see. Oh, it's called Nuke Survival Toolkit. It's not called Swiss Army Knife. So it's called Nuke Survival Toolkit. Okay, I'll share the link though. Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay, let's see. I got the link. Is it a requirement to know Katana for lighter substance design and more? Which is it a requirement to know Katana? I don't think so. It's not a requirement. Obviously, it's a bonus depending on, again, what company you go to. If they require you to know Katana, obviously yes, you should know it. But if you work for a company which doesn't use Katana, then it doesn't matter. Katana is just a tool as any other. It's just more focused on lighting, but you can do the same. Like, lighting is not different in other applications. It's still the same logic. You still place a light, you still place a rim, you still make it look pretty, and you can do it in any application. And the thing is, you don't need to learn the technical side. You don't need to be a developer and all that. You can just enjoy being creative. And that is mainly what Katana is about. Like, once it's you have your templates and everything is set up, you just do the lighting most of the time. Obviously, in the production you do have struggles. But yes, it doesn't matter really. Substance Designer Mari. So Substance Designer, first of all, is just node based. So for procedural nodes, Mari is a way bigger package. You have painting and proceduralism and all that. I guess you meant Substance Painter though. So Substance Painter versus Mari, I would say Substance Painter is more for smaller scale work, and Mari is for the high-end VFX production with tons of detail, tons of texture channels, tons of UDIMs. So definitely Mari is the more professional tool, but you will see people switching from Painter to Mari because you have cool things in Painter which you don't have in Mari, so you will be going back and forth here and there. Have I used Fusion? No, I have not used Fusion. Quick new question. Should I add Unreal Engine's render in my lighting and compositing showreel? I think so. Yes, I think you can add your Unreal, your real-time lighting into your showreel. Yeah, because it's the same idea. You still need to create your kick lights, rim lights, fill lights, all that fancy stuff in Unreal as well. It's obviously, if you apply for a VFX job, it's not actually true nowadays, because in VFX they are starting to use real-time lighting as well for set lighting and all these things as well for their real-time set and stages. So I think you can definitely add it to your reel. You can maybe have a section where you say, okay, this is my real-time lighting or not, but I think it would not hurt. If you want to apply for a lighting job per se, I think it's also good to have regular lighting with a plate where you match the plate and have that on your reel as well. Oh, can you hear my voice is already starting to die? Are you going to try Vex coding in Houdini in the future? It's still very powerful but Vex is just another level. I'm still trying to get into it. Being a technical guy a little bit myself, I know my fair share of coding. So I have a few apps which I develop, which are in the App Store. One is for surfacing art. It's called the Surface app, which is used for material references, so you can place them in the scene and walk around them using your phone. And then another one is a social media app, which I also developed. So I do know my fair share about coding in Swift, which is Apple's native coding, not Apple's coding language. And I'm quite fluent in Python as well. So I do know my way around coding. I have a few books here in the background, which are somewhere there, which are about coding. And you can actually, if you scroll down in the description here, you will find the links to those books, which I started to learn coding. And I know Vex is a different language, but it's very similar to Python as well. Obviously a different syntax, but the logic is the same. So I'm not sure if I will be doing courses or tutorials on Vex coding. There are always better guys. John Kuntz is one who is super good in Vex. And then we have the CG Wiki has a Discord server, which has a YouTube channel as well, which is showing a few bits here and there. It's probably not a Vex stuff. I need to see if I will be doing more Vex coding, but I think it's important to just know the basics first, like how does the code work, how do functions work and all that. And then you can get into Vex, because Vex has so many functions, and you need to understand what they really do before you can really jump into Vex straight up. So are there any more questions out there? Otherwise, we will be calling it, because it is now 1 hour and actually, where can I see? 1:36. So it actually was a quite productive stream today. And I think the good thing is that I split them up. I had my breakdown, and then I had the question. I think it's quite good to split them. So any last questions? Let me type that in the chat as well. Any last questions? Thanks for all the answers. Yeah, no worries. That's what I'm here for. And again, please join the Discord. I think Brian posted the link, and the link is also in the description below. I'll just post that again. It would be great to see you guys over there on the Discord, and I can actually check. Okay, there's one more. What is the cartoon animation? What's my favorite cartoon animation? I think Toy Story was one which I loved. Ratatouille is one which I still like. What else? Yeah, I think that's it actually. I think Toy Story was one of my favorite. Yeah, so that's it, everyone. So let me some teacher, thank you so much. I'll call it. So it was quite fun for me, and I will probably do this more often. I need to do it more often. I don't have always the time for sure. But again, thank you everyone for participating, and I loved all the viewers, and I will call it now. So thanks everyone for joining tonight and for all your great questions out there. And again, if you want to get source files, they are on Patreon, and if you want to join the CG Lounge, the link is below. So thank you everyone. I had a great time tonight, and I will see you in the next video or next tutorial. Thanks so much, and have a good day.